Welcome, Internet Capitalists, to the next interview in our interview series with crypto founders. Today, we have a treat. We have someone who isn't just in the crypto space, but also is in the traditional finance space. We have Eric Satz with us. Eric, how you doing?
I am great, Todd. Really stoked to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great. Well, just so everybody out there knows, Eric is the founder and CEO of Alto Solutions, of which Alto IRA is part. Alto IRA facilitates self-directed IRAs, so IRAs that you and I can decide what we want to put our assets in. The cool thing about it is they're focused on alternative assets like private equity and venture capital, but also for relevance here, crypto. Which is very, very cool. It's sort of a mix between this newfangled thing and what old people typically use in IRAs. Also, the crazy thing to me is Alto has about 1.7 billion in assets with 200 cryptocurrencies and about 29,000 customers. So, Eric, you're definitely a different kind of founder than the guys we talk to on here sometimes.
Well, I'm going to assume that that's a compliment and a good thing, and we can go
Absolutely.
from there.
Well, I think it's important because for this space to grow, we need people from all walks of life and all backgrounds and all capabilities. So that's why Ben and I are really excited that you're here with us today. Having said that, though, the question I always start out with is, what's your background and how did you get involved in crypto?
Yeah. I like to say that it's better to be lucky than good. It's also good to be both lucky and good.
Yep.
That also helps. And one of the other things that when people talk about luck, they often talk about this intersection between hard work and opportunity. I happen to believe that there's a third vector that's often missed, which is awareness
Hmm.
and the ability to recognize the fact essentially that you're in the right place at the right time doing the right thing. And so Alto launched as a result of my own frustration. It's just like so many different founders, right? Like I had this problem, I didn't see any good solutions, so I built it. But that was originally for what are referred to as traditional alternative assets, although in today's nomenclature, everyone's now talking about private markets
Mm-hmm.
because it sounds better than alternative assets. And in 2018, I was trying to figure out how to put crypto into a retirement account, and you really couldn't do it.
Yep.
And one of the one of the individuals who in just in the sort of startup world, venture capital world that I had been following for a long period of time and had formed kind of an email relationship with was a guy named Fred Wilson from Union Square Ventures.
Hmm.
And, Fred's like one of the most prolific VCs anywhere. And he was also the first institutional investor in Coinbase and was on the board of Coinbase. And so I had been following what they were doing. And so in kind of the middle to late of 2018, I started to reach out to them about creating a crypto IRA. And as these discussions tend to take a little while, we eventually were able to launch that partnership with them late 2019. And so the business has really grown from there. We actually have everything that Coinbase offers, we offer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually now 250 plus different digital assets. There are kind of two camps in the crypto world today: the hodlers and the traders. And especially for those who are just now coming to crypto, right? We have all this institutional acceptance of crypto now. Okay, Bitcoin's not going away, Ethereum's not going away, Solana is having another moment. You can look at your top 10. Ripple has a place, but then there's the not top 10, right? And so the hodlers, and you, Todd, you and I have spoken about this,
Yep.
right? We kind of fall into this camp where I believe in Bitcoin. I believe in the long term value. I never really fully understood gold as a store of value. Like if shit were to hit the fan, it would. And you need a gallon of milk. Are you gonna shave some off? And like I don't know how that works, but so when I first learned about Bitcoin, it seemed to have all of the potential positive characteristics of a store of value and decentralized and no single government in control. And that was something I just and I still remember, by the way, the first conversation I ever had with my father-in-law about Bitcoin, and he's like, I don't get it, like and by the way, you can still have this conversation with a lot of people. And basically, it's just that you, me, and Ben all agree that Bitcoin is the store of value.
Yep.
And people want it to be more complicated than that. But at its core, it's not. Right? And so, and if you look at the history of money and you go back to shells that people used to secure on their necklace, right, while they were sleeping, and now we have this thing that you can send to all corners of the universe in a millisecond. Like that's pretty cool. And so I believe in the long-term value and nature of the system that's being built and where it's going. And I think Bitcoin and ETH have a huge role to play in that for the next, I don't know how many years, let's call it 30 years.
Yep.
But then there are folks who are really interested in what's happening in the not top 10. Mm-hmm. And those folks and those coins have a role. And, we carry over 250 of them. And yep. And if you're going to trade in and out, and you're going to do it in a tax advantage way, you're going to do it on Alto. That's the place to. So you can be a buy and hold type investor, or you can be an active trader. And the huge benefit, as you both know, of doing this inside your retirement account is that there are zero tax consequences.
Yep.
Right. And we have lots of customers who basically, on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, they're tracking the performance of the long tail cryptocurrencies against Bitcoin or against ETH. Mm-hmm. And if the long tail is outperforming Bitcoin, they're putting more money into those. And for those assets in the long tail that are underperforming, they sell out and reallocate. Right? These are two totally different approaches to the crypto industry and the future value that's being built in crypto, and both are okay.
Yep. It's funny you brought up, and we talked about it earlier, but brought up the tax issue of trading within an IRA. And it just occurred to me, literally last week, I put together the statement of my online transactions, and it was over 1,000 pages of close to 5,000 transactions. And, it's like, you just kind of go like this. What are you going to do with that? So that, that's a very novel way of looking at it. And honestly, probably caters to, the demographics probably younger than maybe people our age that are hodlers.
So you'd be really, by the way, I've been doing a whole bunch of crypto customer interviews of recent. And I was fully prepared for all the high frequency traders that are on the platform to look like Ben, basically.
Yeah.
Right. but they look like you and me. Like
Really?
I
Yeah.
was, like it blew my mind, right?
Yeah.
And which, by the way, this is why they also keep, detailed spreadsheets and analysis of performance and what's outperforming, what's underperforming, and reallocating and dollar cost averaging and doing all those things that you would expect an experienced trader to do,
Sure.
right? And but to come back to your tax point,
Yeah.
the single biggest problem that Coinbase had at the beginning was was helping clients try to figure out the taxes that they owed. Like
Yep.
it was a mess. And universally in these in these customer conversations, they're like, I found Alto because Coinbase doesn't have an IRA. Right.
Yep.
And, and Coinbase is an Alto investor, and they're our partner, and they're our liquidity provider, which is awesome. And we love working with them. But it's like, hey, Coinbase didn't have an IRA option. And I went Googling or searching or whatever, and I found Alto. It's like,
Hmm.
well, tax problem solved.
Yep. Absolutely. Um, so I've got a couple more questions about the development of Alto, but I have to ask you before we move on. Do you do on-chain stuff too? Are you on-chain with your ledger doing DeFi or no? None of that.
We're not. We're not.
Okay.
So look, Coinbase is our crypto custodian. We move into cold storage. These, at the end of the day, these are retirement
Yeah.
assets, and we take the security of those assets incredibly seriously, and we're responsible for them.
Well, I sort of meant you personally. Are you like we're
Oh,
going to get
me?
off
No,
work
no,
tonight?
no. So me personally, Todd. Like my day job takes a lot of time, and
Okay.
and by the way, all of my crypto is in my crypto IRA account. So
Perfect. Okay.
yeah.
Fair enough. So I can imagine, well, I can't imagine, so I'm going to ask you. You're starting a crypto IRA. What was the biggest challenge to doing that? I mean, I can think of a bunch, but what was the
Getting
biggest one?
Coinbase to say yes.
Okay. Okay.
Look, I think they're a differentiator.
Yep.
I you know
100%.
I think that's proven itself out. That's not to say that Kraken isn't a strong and great company. I think they are. I know the folks at Kraken really well, but certainly if you're going back to 2018, and if you're talking about an organization that was trying to do everything the right way,
Yep.
that they were.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
and so we hitched our buggy to their wagon, if that's the expression. I don't know.
Yep.
I spend more time in math books than in English books, but that sounds pretty good.
Yep.
And it's turned out okay. So that was the single hardest thing, getting Coinbase to say yes.
So as you've scaled, you've got their infrastructure on your side. You've got them to say yes. As you've grown the platform, how is that? How have your issue? What have been your biggest issues to that growth? Then, once you had the infrastructure, how what made you guys start to get clients? What was the thing you had to figure out, or continually have to figure out to keep growing?
So the thing that we're continually figuring out is how to attract people like you and Ben.
Yep.
Right? Like how do you get top of mind? How do you get in front of people?
Hmm.
And I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag, but we're going to be doing something really interesting next month in February. I'll let
Okay.
you know about it so you can tell all your listeners.
Yeah, I had that on there. Alpha. I like
Yeah,
it.
Alpha.
there you go. And so I think I'm pretty excited about it,
Good.
about what we're doing. But also, as you now well know, like I'm reaching out to our customers to
Hmm.
understand what their wish list looks like. And then also to say, how do I get more Bens? How do I get more Todds? And like, tell your friends. And the conventional wisdom of the retirement space in general, I think, was like going around the barn backwards. It was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, take no risk. It's your retirement money. You shouldn't like. It needs to be 100% liquid. You need to. Why?
Yep.
Like, this is you should invest long-term dollars in long-term assets, right?
Yep.
And so this is where you and I perfectly align, which is like buy and hold Bitcoin, buy and hold Ethereum. We'll see it in 20 years. Like what? So, and I think the financial advisor community, as well as by the public, because the Financial Times is writing about it, the Wall Street Journal is writing about it, the New York Times is writing about it, the Economist is writing. Everybody's writing about the fact that portfolio diversification hasn't existed recently.
Mm-hmm.
And the way to actually get true diversification is now to go into these other asset classes, of which crypto is. If you look at the total market cap of crypto, it's bigger than the French stock market, right? Like I think it's the number 7 asset in the world. Like how can you ignore that?
Yep.
And then I'll just tie this to the whole. By the way, I'm not anti-public markets. Public markets play a role in portfolio creation and diversification. But we used to have 9,000 plus public companies. Now we've got less than 4,000 public companies. And every mutual fund, like basically it's the Magnificent Seven, right? Like
yeah.
So the S&P, if you take the Magnificent Seven out, was a 12% return. With the Magnificent Seven in, it's a 25% return. If you just invest in those 7, it's a 60% return. I mean, like, that's not diversification.
Right. So, Ben, I'm going to turn it over to you in a second, but I want to follow up on this conversation about asset allocation because I follow Jeff Park from Bitwise Investors, and he has the radical portfolio theory, which is, I think, saying the same thing that you just said, that these other assets need to be part of your portfolio to be truly not risk-free, but to diversify. So it's crazy.
I agree with them.
Okay. All right, Ben, I know you had some questions here, so I'm going to turn it over to you for a minute.
I'll just jump in here and I'll say the one thing that I was thinking whenever you were giving that nice description is that we, as crypto people who understand and believe in it, view it as actually a long-term risk-off asset, which the market has yet to fully accept or understand. And because of that, we're very willing to put it in these retirement accounts because of that growth. And in fact, it brings me back to my use case for something like Alto. As more of a trader, I actually like to denominate in Bitcoin or in ETH. So all of my trades will be against Bitcoin or ETH. And if I can increase that number, that's what I want to do. And in a tax-free environment like Alto, that is the perfect vehicle for someone like me. And that's not how someone would traditionally think of a retirement account. So I wanted to put my use case out there and highlight that.
So Ben, I think that's really interesting, not just from a trader's perspective, but I'm going to give credit to a guy in Nashville named Drew D'Agostino. Who has written extensively about the fact that he now restates all of his company's financials in Bitcoin. And it's because he has this long-term view of the world and basically says it's not too different from Michael Saylor, by the way, in the sense that any investment he's going to make in the business, he has to believe it's going to outperform Bitcoin. Otherwise, everything that's in his treasury is going to be invested in Bitcoin. And so the other interesting thing is if you restate your financials in terms of Bitcoin and you look at the cost, everyone says, oh, my biggest cost is human resources, right? It's the people. And they're priced in dollars. But then when you blow out your projections and I don't know what the end of this year is going to be, much less people who do 5 and 10 year projections. I don't really believe in that. But let's go out 3 years. If you just go out 3 years and you look at those the cost of those people in terms of Bitcoin, their cost is actually going down. it's not going up. And it's like, and so because Drew's in Nashville, I was able to sit down with him a couple of weeks ago. A mutual friend introduced us, and I had read the paper he had written. Basically, it's like sort of a short white paper about, hey, reprice everything in terms of Bitcoin. And I thought it was just so smart.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out he's a super nice guy and a really bright guy. But he's thinking the way you're thinking, Ben.
Yeah, 100%. I think that like denomination question is something that takes a little bit for newcomers to crypto to understand and get used to, but definitely like a useful tool in an investor trader's toolkit, as you would say. But to build on that, I think the one main impediment from my viewpoint that scares a lot of people off from crypto is the volatility. So although retirement accounts are somewhat immune to volatility as longer term vehicles, I'm just wondering how you've seen the business grow and maybe shrink with the crypto bull and bear cycles. So any thoughts there are welcome.
Yeah, it's no different than any other trading business, right? Which is as the business, volatility is your friend, because volatility, people who are trading, they want volatility. And so right now, and certainly with the new administration that's coming into play, and the expectation that they're going to establish a Bitcoin reserve, and they're going to be crypto friendly, and they're going to have all kinds of conflicts of interest. But I have a friend who used to say, "No conflict, no interest." Right? So which I thought was pretty witty and
I'm writing that down.
Yeah,
that's great.
Pretty witty and pretty spot on. No conflict, no interest. But so I think we're going to expect to see a bunch of volatility through 2025. But back to the point that you were making, like if you're holding, who cares?
Yeah.
Seriously, if you're holding, who cares? And the thing about humans is that most of us are terrible traders. Like we get the psychology all wrong. Even when we know it's wrong, we can't help ourselves. Yeah, which is why I don't trade. So I not good. But there are those who can and those who do. And but when you got a day job and you're like because it requires a lot of attention and analytics and detail, and I can't spend that kind of time on my portfolio.
Yeah, completely understandable. And I think a vehicle like Alto for most people will give them that will to weather the volatility because they know that it's a long-term type of thing for them in there. So 100% understand. And to kind of build on that and ask about your client research, I'm curious, what is your clientele like? Is it mostly people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, or even younger than that? And anything you can highlight there?
Yeah, no. So it's 30 to 70. Like, and I have been talking to our client. Like I established 3 criteria for these crypto customer calls that I've been doing. One is just absolute AUC size, right? So size of account. Take the top 250 account holders, right? The second was trade volume. So based in USD, not Bitcoin, because people are trading all kinds of stuff. So the same, like top 250 trade volume. And then I said the top 250 number of trades. So these people may have smaller accounts. Our average account size, by the way, is like $5,000, which is still 10 times larger than the average retail crypto account, by the way. Yeah, it's actually more than 10 times larger. But so total number of trades, because clearly these are people who are working to build wealth. And they trade a lot. And you can see their account growing. And so at least most of them, I'm sure there are some people who aren't having success. Nobody's perfect. And so it's been real interesting to get the perspective of those three different demographics. But what's been consistent is age. Like, yeah, it's I'm going to say 48 to 65.
Wow.
Very interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, very interesting.
which was shocking to me.
Yeah.
Shocking.
Yeah.
And by the way, I've been meeting some real, including you guys, as a result of doing these customer calls, have been meeting some really, really interesting people who have done, and I'm not going to say their names, but they've done some really incredible things, and including someone who has created something that over 50 million people used online, which was a number that just, like, if I could create something that 50 million
Yeah.
people use, holy smokes, that would be cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
No, that's super interesting to me. I guess I got to recruit some of my friends to get in on the crypto game and get into the crypto IRA business as well. So build those numbers up for us in the 20s.
49,999,999 more to go, Ben.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. All right. Well, Tata, I'll pass back off to you. I think I got my questions answered
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. So Eric, earlier you mentioned the new administration, and what's your whole take on what they can do to be more crypto friendly? I mean, and I get just not doing the dumb stuff and suing people is one thing, but what would you like to see them proactively do to support the industry? And maybe it's nothing, just stay out of our way.
Well, I think stay out is a choice to do something.
Yep.
That, like, doing nothing is doing something. Um, I think more than anything, the SEC under Gensler's leadership just made life incredibly difficult for the leaders in the industry. And even when they were trying to do smart things, innovative things, to do good,
Mm-hmm.
they never got they always got the short end of the stick. Let's just say, and by the way, they always got the stick,
Yes.
right? And so, yeah, I think so long as the SEC puts the stick away,
Mm-hmm.
I do think we need an appropriate regulatory environment. I'm not saying I do think regulations can be incredibly helpful
Mm-hmm.
and clarifying, by the way, and the industry has been asking for it.
Yep.
So let's provide it. Let's provide some direction and some understandable and reasonable rules, and let's let the industry thrive, because there's no question that we should be a leader in the U.S. in this space. And like the prior administration at the SEC level made it impossible.
Yep. Okay. Well, that kind of leads into what's next. So, the next 3, 5, 7 years, you could pick the timeline. Where would you like to see crypto in whatever time? And, throwing out regulation, what do you think is the biggest obstacle to achieving your vision for the industry in general?
Well, I think I think the biggest positive will continue to be institutional and commercial adoption of Bitcoin as a treasury asset, right?
Mm,
So, but I think a lot of people have probably either heard or seen or read, Michael Saylor going to Microsoft and talking to them about putting Bitcoin in the treasury. And I think actually there's a website, and I don't have it off the top of my head, where publicly traded corporations have announced that they're exploring this, right?
mm-hmm.
And so I think that continued adoption is, and by the way, gold has performed really well. I don't know why, but it has. Uh, and I don't bet against things like that, but I just don't bet on them.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think, to the extent that we see corporations move out of fiat and move increasing cash reserves into Bitcoin, I do think that's the path for Bitcoin replacing gold.
Mm-hmm.
Like my crystal ball in terms of timing is like fuzzy. So I'm not even gonna try and guess at that. But I do think that's the path that we're on.
Yep. Yeah. Well, that could happen. That could happen next week or next month or very soon. In maybe not
Good.
Microsoft, but some companies.
Yeah.
So turning it back to Alto now. Where are you gonna? Where do you want to grow? Where do you want to take this? Obviously, you've got the IRA down. What's next?
Um, what there are we have. I know that this is crypto focused, so I just want to mention for a second that we have two sides to our business. We also are in the traditional private markets businesses where we enable individuals to use their retirement money to invest in private companies, private equity funds, venture capital funds, private credit, real estate, other real assets like artwork, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the beauty of crypto is that anyone can play.
Yep.
Whereas those other alternatives, you have to be what's called an accredited investor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the opportunity for outsized returns, in addition to crypto, lives in those other private market opportunities. So this is why I created the company. I will continue to work to broaden access to those other asset classes, so that everybody has the same opportunity to create some financial stability and freedom for themselves.
That's
Um,
awesome.
well, thank you.
Yeah.
Then, with respect to crypto, we have a pretty aggressive roadmap for 2025 in terms of features and functionality that we want to add, which includes staking
Mm-hmm.
and other yield opportunities. And I think that's like whenever you talk about a yield opportunity for a retirement account, that's where it should be, right? Because all of that yield is tax free. Those are big areas of focus for us, as well as all of the charting capabilities that you would want to see and expect to see on your dashboard.
Yep.
For us to deliver those to the users over these next 12 months. And then there are some other things that I'm just not going to announce. And we'll keep in our back pocket until we're there.
That's fine. Just the charting thing, that's not me, but that is extremely valuable. I mean, I talk to Ben all the time, and Ben
It's
can chime
Ben.
in here.
It is Ben. It's not you, but it's Ben. And right now he has to toggle between Coinbase and Alto for a whole bunch of different information, and that shouldn't be the case, and we know it.
Yep.
But when you're a growing company, you got to prioritize. You got to make choices, and yeah.
Yep. All right. So, kind of last sort of hypothetical, sort of not question I have, and I kind of wrote this down. I'm going to read this to make sure I get this right. So, what do you think about the chances of having what I called an on-chain IRA custody trading? Meaning, I'd have a wallet that literally is an IRA, and I could do DeFi, I could farm stuff. Is that even possible?
With a multi-sig wallet, I think so.
Yep.
There is one particular ruling out there that actually, for better or worse, has to do with gold, where someone had gold in their IRA and they were storing it in a safe in their house. And the court ruled that that was a distribution, and therefore they had to pay taxes and penalties on the gold, and they blew the protection of the entire IRA account. To me, the equivalent in the crypto world is if you give someone their own wallet,
Yeah.
and allow them to control the crypto themselves in their wallet. They have their own safe in their house. And so we'd have to kind of figure out how to execute the multi-sig authorization capability in real time.
Yep.
But the other thing I would say is the world is just now catching up to Bitcoin as a real asset.
Mm-hmm.
And the comfort of a centralized exchange is really important to most of those people because they've read all the stories of the lost hard drive and thumb drive and millions of dollars lost, or they can't remember the password, or they can't figure it right. They don't want to be in that situation.
Yep.
Now there's the hardcore community, which I love, by the way. A lot of them live in Puerto Rico for tax reasons.
Yep.
Like, they'll have 12 different, versions of their own wallet on different drives and all of that stuff. And I think that's fantastic. That's just not where the rest of the world is right now.
Right. Well, that makes sense. Well, that's very interesting that, we'll get through the regulation part, but it seems like technically there's a way to do it. It's just, we have to get there.
Technically, I think there is a way to do it. And actually, back to your question about on-chain and DeFi, and I think this actually makes more sense outside of the construct or context of a retirement account. But where people are lending and borrowing,
mm-hmm.
not necessarily in Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think DeFi is going to have a role to play in this. This is like, talk about, opposites attract. Right. DeFi is going to have a role to play in traditional finance. Yeah. And I think so long as everyone remembers there's no free lunch.
Yeah.
Right. Which people forgot for a couple of years there.
Yep.
But hopefully we remember that the next time around, and I think DeFi can play a really significant role in that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ben, I don't have any other questions. This has been great. Do you have anything, Ben, you want to close up with?
Not much else. I would ask though. So, what is the simplest way, so I can tell my friends, tell everyone I know, to set up an Alto IRA? Just go to the website. Any tips you have? Any first transaction ideas for them? But that's welcome.
Yeah. So, remind me, Ben, how old are you?
25.
25. So, by the way, I hope all your 25-year-old friends have IRAs and are saving for their retirement, because the value of compounding is not to be understated. Like hugely important. But yes, just go to altoira.com. You set up your account. You can make a cash contribution up to the limit, I believe, for if you're under 55, I think it's $6,500. If you're over 55, now it's, I think, $7,500, like $1,000 catch up. I always laugh at that, $1,000 catch up. But yeah, so it's pretty straightforward and simple to do that. If you have any questions, by the way, we are one of the few teams that actually provides an 800 number, and we pick up the phone, so at the end of the day, it's not going to be tomorrow. Maybe it's 5 years from now. I believe that the technology will all be table stakes and everybody will have it. And the difference is the client experience that you provide. And it's going to be too late to try and figure that out 5 years from now. You got to do it at the beginning.
Yep.
And so if people have questions, a lot of people now don't want to talk to anybody, and so you can email us and we'll respond as well. But some people like to still pick up the phone, especially when it's about their money, and we're happy to have a conversation and answer any questions.
Yeah, and Ben, I can chime in there too. I transferred money from an IRA there, and I didn't want to just click a bunch of buttons. And yeah, there was a representative that stayed with me through the whole process. So for maybe the people that aren't just starting out that want to move some of their portfolio there, it's also very consumer friendly, customer focused, consumer friendly. You say, yeah, I want it to happen. Magic happens and it shows up there in 3 days, which is great.
Yeah.
And Todd, that's an important point for those listeners who already have IRA accounts,
Yeah.
Or even if they want to roll over a 401k into an Alto IRA, you can have as many IRA accounts as you want.
Yep.
Right. And let's say you have $100 at, $100, $100,000, $100 million, doesn't matter, at, Vanguard or Fidelity or Schwab or wherever it is, you can transfer any percentage of that
Yep.
over to Alto. No tax consequences whatsoever. And that's the beauty of the system.
Absolutely. Well, Eric, thank you very much. This has been great. Is there anything that we missed that you want to talk about?
I don't think so. You guys are great, podcast hosts, and thank you so much for having me on. It's really been a pleasure.
Well, thank you. And this has been great. And everybody out there, if you have any questions, check out Alto IRA website and contact them for the sort of next step in your crypto journey.
Amen.
Awesome.